Today, we're going to talk about what actually causes menopause. So many of us have heard the term, but yet we never really think about what's happening on a cellular and physiologic level that causes these dramatic changes in our body. Well, if you don't know me, I'm Dr. Laurie Marbas. I am a board certified family and lifestyle medicine physician who specializes in nutrition and exercise and really helping people get well, regardless of where you are in your journey in health. I happen to be in my mid 50s. I'm going through this menopausal change myself. So it's really become a highlight of a lot of my interests in deep diving into the research. But some of the questions I get are very basic, right? So let's talk about what actually causes menopause, what that means. And then I'm going to compare it to basically how a caterpillar transforms into a butterfly, because I think we need to change our conversation around this really amazing opportunity. Yes, it can be painful, and I can share my story. I shared my menopause journey more recently and what I've done to try to figure out what's going on with this alien body that I'm living in and how things have shifted and improved, just being aware. And so here we go. First of all, I'm going to start with just getting the basics right. So, walk you through some of the stages, and then we'll talk about how that comparison can change our perspective and have a more positive attitude about menopause, because the more we resist it, the more difficult it becomes, and the more we suffer, honestly, at least emotionally and mentally, as we're trying to figure out why this is happening. Well, 100% of women, don't forget, will go through this if you live long enough. You will go through menopause. That is a guarantee. All right. Number one, remember, menopause is the biological process really marking the end of your reproductive years. So that transition involves a few different things, very profound cellular, physiologic, hormonal shifts that are occurring in the body. So remember, number one, there's premenopause, right? That's your reproductive phase. Let's talk about the three different things that are occurring. Ovarian function. So ovaries produce high levels of estrogen and progesterone, and they regulate the menstrual cycle and they maintain your fertility. There's another thing that's occurring within the ovary called follicle development, right? So the follicles in the ovaries, they mature and then they release the eggs, which is ovulation, which is essential, obviously, for reproduction. And then you have this hormonal regulation, right? So it actually occurs in the brain. Believe it or not, there's this thing called the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland. Think of that as the master gland that really regulates the production of these hormones, and through a feedback, right? So it's always listening and scanning and seeing how much estrogen are you producing, how much progesterone, things like that. So next we enter into this phase, which I would consider myself in, because I haven't quite hit the definition medically of what menopause is. It's called perimenopause. Now, this can start as early in your late 30s, most of the time in mid 40s, through your mid 50s, somewhere in that time frame. Roughly, you, like I said, you may be on either end of that scale, but most of the time women are going through this transition in that 45 to 55 age time frame. So what's going on here? Well, you have these hormonal fluctuations, right? And so instead of just being this kind of smooth, cyclic symphony of hormones that just do its thing every month, now we're getting some changes, right? You might have some upper days or some lower days. You might notice that your periods are longer or shorter, heavier or lighter. Sometimes you're like, oh, they're gone, and here they come again. So basically, the estrogen and progesterone levels become irregular, right? That leads to the changes in the menstrual cycle. And what's going on here? Well, you have decreased ovarian reserve. So the number of those viable follicles has decreased. Thus, you get a decline in your estrogen production. And again, those symptoms could be hot flashes, night sweats, mood swings, irregular periods, all due to these hormonal imbalances. And I have another video on at least 30 plus different symptoms that you can get from menopause. And some women have zero, and some women have, it seems like, all of them. Some are more pronounced and more difficult and more concerning than others. But again, some are just annoying. All very important to understand what's going on in our body, because sometimes those symptoms, when they first appear, we're not aware of what's going on because our periods seem relatively stable. However, that very well could be the beginning of this transition into perimenopause. Next is menopause, right? So this is really the end of your reproductive years, kind of what I mentioned before. So that's basically the ending of your menstruation, and the medical term is the end of menstruation for 12 consecutive months. I'm on month, what is this? We're about to hit 6. I think I'm on month 8. We'll see what the body does. Next, you can see these low hormone amounts, right? So you have your cyclic nature in pre-menstruation, right? I mean, or premenopausal, where you're going through your reproductive years, and you have your perimenopause, and it's kind of going like this, like you're kind of in a storm. And now you're kind of, the storm is recessing, and you'll see this just continual decline. What's interesting about this transitional phase between perimenopause and menopause, you can see some really serious acceleration of certain things like decreased bone mass. You can see increased inflammation, and that tends to level off as you enter into that 12-month period of the menopause. Physical changes can include a few different things: vaginal dryness, decreased bone density, like I mentioned, your cholesterol levels changed. I shared in my own story that I have always had an LDL, which is your bad cholesterol, under 100, usually in the 80s or lower. Most of my, I think all my life that I've ever had, I've never had it over 100. I wasn't feeling well. I started beginning to understand what was going on. I was a little slow to the party. Um, and I checked my cholesterol, and it was in the low 100s, but above 100 for the first time. And being someone who pays attention to these things, I love data. It startled me. And I already knew my heart was well. I had a coronary artery calcium score last year. The score was 0, which is fantastic. Again, but there was some crazy stuff going on. And I was like, nope, can't have this. I have serious heart disease family risk factors, including, early onset before age 40, and death in the early 40s from people. So I'm more frantic about my heart health and my cardiovascular health, and probably more than anything else that could go wrong. Because again, remember, heart disease is the number one killer of men and women. And we really match men when we go postmenopausal as far as, our heart attack risk. So, moving on, the next final phase is postmenopause, right? That's kind of your new balance. So, basically, your hormone levels have stabilized. Um, you still have an increased risk of, like I mentioned, cardiovascular disease, osteoporosis, and other age related things that are conditions related to low estrogen levels, insulin resistance, weight gain, things like that. But the body adapts, right? The mind adapts. There's a lot of things that can occur. So many women before us, before we had the creation of, medications like hormones and hormone replacement therapy, or menopause hormone therapy, that could be very, very helpful. So I went through all of that because I really wanted to change the conversation and help you maybe have a different perspective on this crazy time called menopause. Yes, it can be difficult and unsettling and frustrating, especially if you're struggling to understand what's going on, or if you have a healthcare provider it's difficult to find that you can trust, that can actually converse with you about what's going on and understands. But I want you to think about it this way. Number one, let's talk about this too, the journey of a caterpillar, right? As it goes through the different phases and becomes this amazing, beautiful butterfly on the other side. And that's how I'm going to think about my life, right? What this body has been through. So remember that the caterpillar is kind of the reproductive phase, right? The caterpillar, like the premenopausal woman, is in a phase of growth and active preparation for transformation. The caterpillar eats ferociously. It's storing energy for the future, much like the reproductive phase, right? Where our body prepares for potential pregnancy and reproduction. Of course, not everyone does that, but that's basically what's occurring with these cycles every month. And then you have the chrysalis, right? This is what I call the perimenopause, right? So this is where the transformation begins. Like I mentioned, between that 45 and 55 years of age. The caterpillar forms the chrysalis and marks the beginning of really profound internal changes, obviously. So similarly, perimenopause is a time of tremendous hormonal changes and shifts, which really sets the stage for menopause. And inside the chrysalis, the caterpillar's body releases enzymes that break down the old structures. In women, fluctuating hormones kind of lead to the same thing, right? You have changes physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally. And it's really in preparation for emergence, right? So, I almost think of it as like we become so aware of our symptoms that it forces us to have introspection, to really look about the journey where we've come so far, really understanding that most of us as women live our lives to serve others and take care of others. But something happens, right? You become a little bit more on edge, paying attention to things, things set you off a little bit, and you're thinking more for yourself. It's an interesting time how again you kind of turn inward in preparation to go out. And yeah, that's how I'm like you to think about it. And so basically, we're just preparing for our emergence. And I like to call the emergence from, where the cocoon, where the caterpillar was changing, the emergence is menopause, right? So that's kind of the end of the transformation. You've gotten to that 12 months, and this beautiful butterfly emerges from the cocoon. At first, it's a little wet and it's trying to figure out and dry its wings and figure out what's going on. Similarly, we're kind of readjusting to this new phase, right? But there's a new identity that occurs, I think, with menopause, right? The butterfly is emerging into this beautiful new rebirth. I think menopause can be a rebirth into a new phase of life with different roles and different responsibilities. Most of us have children have now grown or they're older, caring for themselves mostly, or moved on. They're having their own families. That empty nest syndrome, which I'm going through or have gone through. And yeah, it's just a time for different reflection and a time to really take care of yourself, and understand that now is a wonderful time in life that you probably have more adequate, financial resources. Your wisdom years have you accumulated to now that you have a different perspective on life in general, and so it's going to be a great time for you to emerge into a different role in life. And so I kind of consider this as a marking. Yes, the physical and the emotional mental can be really difficult, and there's absolutely help for that. But I really want us to think it also as this is an exciting time with help of, if you need it, healthcare providers to help you lead a healthier life, how to deal with all these things that are occurring and make it less ideal or make it more ideal or less cumbersome or less uncomfortable as you if your body shifts through this. And then I consider the butterfly this beautiful thing. Think of yourself as this butterfly, and literally you're just embracing life and you're flying. You're having freedom. It's beautiful. You're graceful. You're wise, and you're just in a new place, right? Because you've done all this amazing things in your life, and now you can embrace it and enjoy it. And you can explore the world with a different perspective and a different outlook and a different energy. Yes, it is a transition, and all transitions can be scary if you're not aware of what's going on and if you're afraid and resist it. But the more we are open to the change and understand that this can be a beautiful place in life, um, and one that not all of our ancestors went through, right? Their previous, I think in the, I don't know, 100, 200 years ago, you know, average age lifespan was 40 years old for a female. We're very blessed in the sense that we can live longer and kind of go through this and really just see life from a different angle, right? But you have to earn it, right? You have to earn it. You have to live long enough to go through that and weather the changes that are occurring. And now we get to land somewhere that's beautiful, and land is it's exciting to explore. So again, I want you to think of yourself as this beautiful butterfly that's coming, and just imagine what colors you're going to be and how people are going to be in awe and just love to be with you because you bring them joy and love and all that. So I hope that brings another perspective, gives you a little bit of the science, but also a little bit of the stuff that I like to talk about is the spirituality piece and the sentimental piece and just mindfulness, right? So maybe we can have a mindful menopause. Maybe that'll be a thing. So again, I just want to say thank you for always being here. I appreciate your time because I understand that's the one thing you can't get back. And you shared a little bit with me today. So I want to give back to you and send you love, joy, peace, and healing. Because like I've always said, we all need a little bit more of that in our world every single day. So go spread it around to the rest of the world. Please, if you're watching, feel free to register for my free masterclass. It's called the 5 Steps to Master Your Metabolism and Lose Weight. A part of my program, my framework is one, understanding and educating, assessing, and really changing your perspective and being mindful, right? So there's some really fun things there. It's completely free. I also talk about the 4 biggest mistakes people make on their weight loss journey. And this menopause journey is a big one. And the cholesterol, all of this fits right into that free masterclass. So I hope you check it out. And again, like I said, I appreciate all of you being here, and have a great and blessed rest of your day. All right, take care.